In this session, we'll be discussing about Modigliani and Miller approach. Modigliani and Miller approach is a part of irrelevance hypothesis, and it states that dividend policy has no effect on the market price of the shares, and the value of the firm is determined by the earning capacity of the firm or its investment policy. So, when a company pays dividend, the market price of its share increases. So, the value of the firm also increases. But due to payment of this dividend, cash balance decrease. So the funds for financing the projects also decreases. So, a company issues new shares which increase the supply of the shares, which will automatically decrease the price of this share. So, whatever increase taking place in the price of the share, through payment of dividend it gets nullified due to the increased supply of the shares. So that is what is stated by model. Dividend irrelevance hypothesis also implies that the shareholders are indifferent between dividends and capital gains. Next, let's see what are the assumptions of model. So there, according to model, the assumptions include there are perfect capital markets and investors behave rationally, and there are no flotation and transaction cost, and also firm has a fixed investment policy, and also no investor is large enough to affect the market price of shares. Next, let's see the mathematical approach of model. So the formula for calculating market price of shares, P0 is equal to D1 plus P1 divided by 1 plus KE, whereas P0 is the market price of share at the beginning of the period or prevailing market price of the share. D1 is the dividend to be received at the end of the period. P1 is the market price of the share at the end of the period, which can be calculated by P1 is equal to P into 1 plus K minus D1, where D1 is the dividend to be received at the end of the period, and KE is the cost of equity capital or rate of capitalization. Next, to find the number of shares to be issued, formula for finding the number of shares to be issued, M is equal to I into E minus N D1 divided by P1. Here I is the investment required, E is the expected earnings, and D is the dividend to be received at the end of the period. And here N is also ND1. ND1 means N is equal to number of shares. Next, the formula for value of firm, P0 is equal to N plus M into P minus I minus E divided by 1 plus K. Here M is the number of shares to be issued, I is the investment required, E is the total earnings of the firm during the period, P1 is the market price per share at the end of the period, K is the cost of equity capital, N is the number of shares outstanding at the beginning of the period, and D1 is the dividend to be paid at the end of the period. Now let's see what is the criticism of model. So according to the as the model assumed that perfect capital market exists, in reality perfect capital market does not exist, and the information of the company is not all the information about the company is not available to all the persons, and the firms have to incur flotation costs while issuing the securities, and the firm do not follow any investment policy that they can change according from time to time. The investors have to pay brokerage or fees etc. while doing any transaction, and shareholders may prefer current income as compared to further gains. Next, let's do a problem. So ABC Limited belongs to a risk class for which the appropriate capitalization rate is 10%. It currently has outstanding 5,000 shares selling at rupees 100 each. The firm is contemplating the declaration of dividend of rupees 6 per share at the end of the current financial year. The company expects to have an income of 50,000 and has a proposal for making new investment of rupees 1 lakh. So show that under hypothesis the payment of dividend has no effect on the value of the firm. Now here K is given as 10%, which is the capitalization rate, and number of shares 5,000 at rupees face value 100, and the dividend of rupees 6 per share, and net income 50,000 as making a new investment as for 1 lakh. Now let us do the problem. First, let's see what is the price of the share at the end of the current financial year. P1 is equal to P0 into 1 plus KE minus D1, 100 into 1 plus 10%, so 0.10 minus 6 is the dividend price, which equals to rupees 104. So the price of the share at the end of the period is rupees 104. Now let's see the number of shares to be issued. M is equal to I into E minus N D1 divided by P1. I is the investment, which is 1 lakh, minus 50,000 the net income, earnings minus 5,000 N D1, 5,000 into 6 divided by the current price of the share, which is 104, which equals 80,000 divided by 104. Now let's see what is the value of the firm. After the in this case we are finding the value of the firm after the dividends are paid out. So P is equal to N plus M into P1 minus I minus E divided by 1 plus KE, which equals to 5,000 plus M we got as 80,000 divided by 104 into 104 minus 1 lakh minus 50,000 divided by 1 plus 0.10, which equals to rupees 5 lakh. So now after paying out the dividends, we got the answer as 5 lakh rupees as the value of the firm. Now let's see what happens when the dividends are not paid. So for calculating the value of the firms when dividends are not paid, price per share at the end of the period, P1 is equal to P into 1 plus K minus D1, where we'll keep D as 0. So we get the price of the share as rupees 110. Now let's see the number of shares to be issued at the end of the period, which is given as M is equal to I into E minus N D1 divided by P1, which equals to 50,000 divided by 110. Now let's see the value of the firm when the dividends are 0. P0 is equal to N plus M into P1 minus I minus E